said, oh, we don't know. We're looking at a lot of different routes, but when we actually looked under that, it was coming right down the railroad tracks because, again, look at the aerial photograph. Oh, there's nothing there, and there are no houses that we would be disturbing, and this would be the perfect place for a pipeline. So we went to a meeting, and I asked if there were any cultural resources that would be affected by this pipeline. And they said, no, we've done a survey, and there are not. And I thought, well, I doubt if that's true. So I started doing some research and realized that this little spur, this Greeley, Salt Lake, and Pacific Railroad spur, was actually the last intact segment of this line that the Union Pacific had planned to build to Salt Lake, but instead had gone to sandstone quarries and to limestone quarries, and actually really, that really contributed to the economy of Fort Collins. All these buildings, sandstone buildings, sidewalks you see downtown, not just Fort Collins, but Denver, Omaha, and then of course the limestone was used in the beet industry. It's used in the process to turn sugar beets into sugar. So that was really critical to our big beet industry, sugar beet industry here. So being a historic preservationist, I nominated this segment to the National Register of Historic Places. And what that did for us was there is a federal law that says if the federal government is either funding, licensing, or in some way involved in a project that affects historic resources, that they have to consult with the State Historic Preservation Office, with a number of other interested parties, about what kind of damage would be done to the resource. And so that put us in a multi-year fight. How many years? 7 years, Rose?
For which?
For Greeley pipeline. It was about 7 years.
It was more like 10. Well,
It felt like 100, but
no, it was 7 to 15. Yeah, 7 years.
We fought this pipeline, and in court we had several different court battles. We ended up resisting until they finally condemned us. But what we did get out of that was that they changed the route of the pipeline, so it didn't disturb any of the railroad right-of-way. And they actually, instead of, when they build a pipeline, they just come in with a bulldozer, flatten everything 100 feet wide, and then you're not allowed to grow any vegetation there ever again. And so you can imagine what that would have done to this property and to the property we're going to see further west. So they instead drilled underneath the railroad every place that they were going to be disturbing the historic railroad right-of-way. They went underground. And so now the railroad line is intact, and it's also a really amazing wildlife corridor back to the west of us. So that's historic preservation. You fight and fight and fight and fight, and you get something in the end. Yes.
And Mary, would you explain, you nominated this property because you are the owner of over there?
Well, there are 3 owners, the Brinks, the Wileys, and myself and my husband.
And did all 3 of you nominate your sections?
No, we did it all as one with
three
agreeing property owners.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when Rose got the railroad frontage or whatever it was put in her name, it didn't include this deal here.
She wanted to know, when you got the railroad put in your name, they were just going to condemn her, just like they were going to condemn. We all owned this property in fee simple by that time, but the city has rights of condemnation, so they were just going to condemn it because they thought it looked like the straightest, shortest, best way to go.
What does that mean, condemn it?
Take it.
They take it.
Did you mention that?
Forced sale.
Oh, they take it.
They just take it.
Well, it's a forced
Well, that's
sale.
a fancy word to say they just steal it, huh?
Well,
Kinda.
they have to compensate you, but after all our court costs, I guess we kind of lost on that one.
I don't remember exactly, but I think we got something like $240,000 for them going through spent more than that on lawyers.
Yeah, right.
It was all a waste of money.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it wasn't a waste.
No, it wasn't a
because-
waste.
Well,
Thank you.
whatever. Well, it was hard. Jim was going downhill with Alzheimer's, and I
Yeah.
couldn't get away to find a good attorney, and they all lied. And they said, "Oh, we think we can stop Greeley." Nobody could stop. They could have taken it across the river. I have a big map by the house of their original routes. They had about at least 10 good routes around Laporte, or along they have a pipe route right across the river. But I think it was lined with wood.
It was
I think
wood.
they, you know, when people are starting to develop proposals and they get fixated on their first choice, and that seemed to be what happened. They said they had 18 routes and they had a map showing them, but this was what they wanted. This was straight. This was, you know, there wouldn't be a whole bunch of homeowners screaming about it going right by their house or through their yard or something like that. They only had to deal with Rose Springs. So they didn't know that was like 100 homeowners screaming at it.
I'm very protective of my family.
This National Register nomination includes the railroad right-of-way. Those of us who are standing up here, it's about 6 feet. They raised it up, built it up about 6 feet over the ground level, and they put down ballast, like rocks, and laid rail ties and rails. And way back there, where we're not going to go because there's poison ivy and way too much brush, there are still some tracks on this line.
Mary,
Yes.
I'd like to mention also that there's actually a segment of this rail line intact in downtown Fort Collins
Oh, where?
that I located while I was surveying down in that area.
Oh, really?
It's a short section, still with the ties and rails.
Oh,
It runs from Linden Street at Willow. Do you know where that is? Where the fort used to be, okay? Along the north side of Willow, it runs to the east to right in front of Ranchway Feeds.
Oh,
So it just stubbed out right at Linden
In the
Street.
so it's about
lumberyard parking lot.
It's about a block long.
You know where the Hubbard Feeds building is?
It's not used,
you're
it hasn't
on
been used in
the-
years, but it's still there. And
If
that's
you're on the
still
non-river side, I'm trying to think of
Yeah,
directions
yeah,
of
yeah,
non-river
yeah.
side. It's
Ties and
literally
tracks are
right
still
off of the road,
about that.
and you can walk it. I walked it too. It's pretty cool.
It's so distant from here, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mary, I have a question. How long is the segment that was
The segment is 8/10 of a mile.
8/10 of a mile?
Yeah. So
Within this
it's,
property, yeah.
it's not much, but it's what's left, and it gives us a chance to tell this story. I think it's fascinating that they had this original idea of showing up Burlington Northern by grading something up Poudre Canyon, and then, but actually Union Pacific had bought 160 acres under what's under at Stout, what's under Horsetooth Reservoir right now, for the sandstone. And so they put their heads together and figured, oh, well, we'll just run a little spur down there, start hauling sandstone, and that was really, really profitable. And then when that played out, they started building a spur up north to the Ingleside mine quarry. That was limestone quarry, probably about 1908, and then a little further to the Rex quarry, which was 1924.
Is that limestone too?
Limestone.
Yeah, they needed it for the sugar factory in Fort Collins.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And,
So-
and by the way, for those of you who went on the Bingham Farm tour that we did 2 years ago, this is the same line that curves through the Bingham Farm
Oh, yeah.
as it heads south towards Stout.
Preservation designation, does that preserve the property for future generations, or is there some protection on the property?
The
Repeat her
protection
question.
is,
Can you repeat the question?
she asked if you get the National Register designation, does it preserve it for future generations? The preservation is quite specific to a federal funded or licensed operation. So if somebody, private party comes in and does something, if a corporation comes in and does something, that doesn't protect it. But the federal government cannot just come and destroy a resource that is listed on the National Register without some consultation. But the consultation actually,
But ultimately, they can do what they want.
ultimately they can do what they want because it went to the highest level, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. They ruled in our favor and really said, tough. So,
Ironically, a lot of like historic preservation is more restrictive, like at the more local level.
Yeah.
right.
Like if you, yeah, it's interesting. Just depends on what jurisdiction you're looking at.
Do you have a question?
So people probably don't realize that Greeley's water treatment plant, their original treatment plant, is right over near the mouth of the canyon on the south side. Do you remember what year that was built? It's really old, 1909,
In the teens.
1920, something.
Yeah.
And so the city of Greeley is moving water from the Poudre 35 miles to the city. And you go, why would you put it here? It's cleaner coming out of the mountains and going all the way. So they have this long pipeline. Well, when they built the new one, they oversized it, but they don't own the rights to fill it. I was with Save the Poudre, so they built a giant pipeline that they don't have legal water to fill it up, but that could be down in the future. So, I mean, it's kind of amazing how long ago they built that water treatment plant.
Senior water rights.
They also own the water in Lake Loveland.
Yeah.
They own a lot of water.
Greeley has a lot of water.
Well,
And the
that was
pipeline-
the point we were trying to make too. You don't need this pipeline. You know, what's
Yeah.
the matter with your existing pipeline? But
Well, they let their old easement get encroached on, their existing easement.
Correct.
So they did not monitor their existing easement, and housing encroached on it right through Laporte. And their easement also provides for one or more. So the easement is already written for more Greeley pipelines.
okay. Any more questions? I think, Meg, we're going to, those who want to, can either walk back